All right, Kevin back with you with another episode of the $1 Million Relationships Podcast. And today I am here with Joe. Joe, welcome, man. So awesome to have you today.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate you for having me. And it's cool to reconnect. It's been since
Absolutely.
2018.
I know, time flies, don't it? I know you and I were talking before we hit the record button, and it's like, you and I met in the spring of 2018 when we were both in the Chicago area attending Perry Marshall's event.
That's right. Shout out to Perry.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, shout out to Perry. And I've had Perry on the show here and stuff, and it's having a show like this that is about relationships, and I will tell you, this has been one of the most rewarding things that I've done in my entrepreneurial career. It's just and being able to have conversations with people like you around relationships, and let you have an opportunity to honor some people who have had a profound impact on your life and on your business. And for the listeners, we get to kind of just inspire them to place an intentional focus on creating more real, meaningful, rewarding, and profitable relationships in their lives.
I love it, man.
And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to start by just kind of turn over to you to start with, Joe, and let you share a little bit about who you are, what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about what you do. We'll just start there and set a little bit of context.
Love it. Yeah, will do, Kevin. So, my name is Joe Fier, and I've been entrepreneur, digital marketing space, content marketing for, I guess, 15, 16 years, something like that. Who's counting anyway? And I've met a lot of great people over the years, and I have a handful of folks I'll honor here, in a little bit. But over the years, I mean, it's what you just said, Kevin. It's always been relationships. Every door that's opened has been someone that has trusted me. I've connected with them in some way, exchanged value, kind of co-created something in the moment, and then something else happens because of that. So I've seen myself as a connector and a co-creator. And in business, like, I've had many business partners, some longer than others. And our mutual buddy Brad Costanzo, who kind of nudged you to getting this podcast going, has been one of those business partners and really good buddy of mine. And and he's also another Perry Marshall lover and was at that event with us.
Yes, he is.
Like I've had content as the core of my foundation in business, from blogging, a podcast. Since 2010 is when I started with my co-host and past business partner, Matt Wolf, previous co-host and previous business partner. And that was called the Online Income Podcast. And that was like before anyone even knew what a podcast was. I wish that we kept it going. But now, fast forward, I've had a podcast called the Hustle and Flowchart Podcast for 6 years, just crossed 500 episodes. And back to relationships, that's like the best thing. Just as you just said with this podcast, it's the best thing I've ever done in business in terms of connecting and co-creating. It goes to that. And affiliate marketing has been a business that just naturally happens from co-creating and connections, all sorts of different offers and ways to collab, in terms of doing the business side of things and making money. There's all these fun models. But that's, I guess, to round it all out, that's what I've always been interested in. And I love working with other people and just exchanging ideas and seeing what can happen. It honestly lights me up. And and that's where I explore so many different niches, however you want to say it. But it's always, my focus is, how do we help someone along their journey, wherever they're at?
Yeah.
And I choose to do that with my podcast and speak to entrepreneurs, digital marketers, to really get to what is it that they should do or want to do with their life to fulfill them in creating a better business life for themselves, but also that ripple effect to the people they're connected with do the same.
That's right. Yeah. That is incredibly rewarding when we can, have an impact on other people by bringing, our skill sets, what Dan Sullivan would call unique ability to the table.
Yeah.
And it's incredibly rewarding. And I know for me, relationships, I mean, I firmly believe that relationships are the most valuable asset we have as
Mm.
entrepreneurs. And everything else stems from that. And that's kind of like what you were just talking about as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so what I want to do now is I'm going to shift gears slightly. And I'm going to reiterate the question for the benefit of the listeners. So we'll set the stage for this. Have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Joe, I'm just like really excited to hear your story, your experience around this, and just give you the opportunity
Yeah.
to honor somebody who's had such a profound impact on your life and your business.
Thanks, Kevin. And I love this question. It's a profound question, and it got me thinking. And thank you for preparing me ahead of time to answer this question, because I'm like, one person? No
Yeah.
way. I mean, it's a string of events. And the first person I'll shout out is my previous partner, co-host and business partner, Matt Wolf,
Mhm.
who we're still buddies. I just met with him the other day for coffee, and him and I, so he was the one that we both got into business together at the same time.
Okay.
And quick story, the way that we met was through music. We both played in bands, played guitar, and all this fun stuff. We never actually were in the same band together, though. It was like mutual friends. And
Huh.
then one day, someone connected us at a house party. I'm like, "Who's this tall guy with the big beard?" And it was him. And for some, we just jived. And I was working at a shoe store, Famous Footwear of all things. This was
Huh.
pre entrepreneur days,
Yeah.
but I was very
Yeah.
curious. I just didn't know entrepreneurs at the time. My family was not, and they're like always career driven and things like that. That's where I thought I was going. I
Mhm.
was like studying networking for computers and stuff. I'm like, man, I am not an engineer, even though like I'm like, oh, this is a good job, and no, not for me. Thank God I bailed out there. But I found Matt, and funny story is his mom came to the shoe store that I worked at, and I didn't know it was his mom at first, but I was just helping her like anyone else. And I was just having fun, having a conversation. She's like, "Oh, I'm Matt Wolf's mom. And I think you're really cool. You should work for my company." And I
Huh.
was like, What?" I'm like, interested. And they had a shutter company, a wooden shutter manufacturing
Okay.
company
Okay.
here in San Diego. But I saw that as an opportunity. I was like, you know what? This is cool. It's different. It's more relaxed. It's a family company. They're entrepreneurs. I've always been interested. So maybe I can kind of glean a little bit there. And then that
Uh-huh.
Matt guy seems interesting. So I ended up working there. And his mom just thought I was a good representation of possibly their company, just
Uh-huh.
good person to have.
Mhm.
And I worked there for maybe 3 years or so. And this was during school, I was doing all this stuff. But basically, Matt and I, we had a lot of freedom and we got our work done. But then we would just tinker around on forums and blogs and try some things. We wrote a health blog because I was into a lot of health stuff, doing all these, I don't know, exploring different things around fitness. So we had a blog on
Okay.
that, and then also a more of a money focused one. It's how we learned AdSense, how all these text link ads back in the day when you can get paid for this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Now it's
Yep.
game has changed, but we figured out how to drive traffic, and we kind of just dove in, and that is what got me to commit fully to entrepreneurship. Is I
Okay.
bailed out of my some extra jobs after that. Right after college, I went into business instead of doing the career thing. I just like, nope, got to do the business thing myself. I
Uh-huh.
see a path here.
Mhm.
And Matt and I read, I think it was Rich Schefren's manifesto
I
back in the day,
remember that.
which ironically I'm having a call with Rich later today, and now we're really good buddies. I'm like, this is
Uh-huh.
so cool.
Mhm.
And but he was one of like the first guru, I guess, that I
Yep.
read and inspired me. And him and Justin Brook. Justin Brook had a course, it's some training that Matt and I both somehow brought $1,000 together, probably put it on credit, I think it was, got the wives to agree. And that was like full immersion into let's do this. Like I learned how to grow an email list and offers, all that kind of stuff. Another mentor that came after that was Alex Jeffries, and
Uh-huh.
and they're all friends now, which is really cool still to this day. But it was because of Matt was the one that kind of opened up the doors of what he was exploring and what's possible.
Okay.
Gave me the confidence to like go all in and haven't looked back.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. So, so okay. So now I don't want to just bowl right over the top of you, Joe. So I want to make sure.
And leave me.
Do you want to dig deeper into any of these? Because you've mentioned a few other names.
There's a few.
Rich, you've mentioned Justin. I've interviewed Justin for the podcast too. And I love
Cool.
Justin. I mean, he is just such an awesome guy. And so because I can ask some questions, but I want to make sure, like I said, I'm just not bowling right over the top of you. So
yeah. Well, I guess I'll speed it up and maybe I'll
you don't have to speed it up. You're totally fine. So yeah, just keep whatever pace is good for you. We'll just keep going then. So
all right then, yeah. Now with Matt, so he turned into a partner in business in a lot of different ways throughout the years. And it's about 16 years we were partners off and on, and it wasn't until recently where we decided, okay, we're at a point where we've done probably enough together, but because we've probably a good 5 or 6 businesses we've been associated with, 4 different podcasts, so many, maybe probably more businesses than that. So we're like, okay, we know each other. We're brothers from another mother at this point on, and it's been great. So right around that time, in the early phases, I re-met my wife. And she's the other person I really want to highlight here because she was an entrepreneur. When we got married, she was working with her mom, and I learned a ton from her, just immersion. And she was also the one that supported me to take the leap. So got to name her as well. And still to this day, we run businesses together. I like to say it's co-preneurship, that term. It's not really common or really talked about too much, but I'm like, there's a lot to it when you're running a life outside of business and kids as well. And then you have,
you guys have, Joe?
I have 1 biological, but also we fostered 7 kids at one point, and one of them for 15 months. So I technically kind of say 2.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that was a perspective change right there. And that's a whole nother tangent,
Yeah.
But yeah, Heather and my wife, I mean, it's been so cool because we're different, but we have the same vision, and that extends outside of business. It goes to personal life and what we want to do to just have a great life. And I'm fully confident at this point. I've hustled and grinded. She's been right there with me. And now realizing maybe it's because I'm almost 40, is oh, there's different priorities and things I really want to embrace in life. So we've always been this great balance, but she's always been a great support for me through some really dark days, but also the high highs as well.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And that just, so she's always been there, and we've been married, almost 15 years now too. So it's last person I want to meet, I want to shout out. And this guy, I don't know if you know him, but I'm sure you know all the characters that follow. His name is David Klein. DK is what he goes by.
I do not know David.
Okay. So I think he's on the West Coast out here by San Diego.
Okay.
And he was a chiropractor, at least practicing. I guess once a chiropractor, always a chiropractor. But this guy, I met him at a dinner with Mike Phil Same. So it was some event in San Diego, and I'm sure you know Mike. Yep. And yeah, so DK, him and I hit it off, and he was like, hey, let me go crack your neck at my office sometime. And I was like, okay, cool. I like chiropractic work. So that was no brainer. But then I realized this dude's connected to all the gurus in San Diego, which at that time they're all in La Jolla. It's like Frank Kern and Amish Shah, you had Mike Koenig's, all these other folks that are kind of were local or are local. Somehow they knew DK. So he was like, come to my chiropractic office, fix your neck, because I had some neck issues, but also meet the characters that are just cycling through this place. And I'm going to let you know kind of when they'll be around so you can meet them. And I'm going to find a way for you to essentially start doing some business and do stuff with them, because you do really interesting things. And sure enough, he had an event as well that a lot of these folks came to, and he invited me there. when I didn't have a lot of money at it, like, because this was like early days, so
Uh-huh.
it was like, he's like, you know what? I think you're going to give a ton of value. And he opened the doors to all those guys. And a lot of them became friends, still are today,
Wow.
and business
Wow.
partners. So it was just like this happenstance dinner turned into this. I don't know. It was wild. Let's fix your neck, and then also meet the top dogs in the digital marketing space,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it
Wow.
just went from there. So those are the people that I have in my notes here.
I mean, that is pretty awesome. And like, what I really love is how the people that you spoke about, Matt and your wife and David, how it just opened the door, those relationships opened the door to so many other
Yes.
relationships in your life and friendships that have come into play because of those three relationships.
Hmm.
And so now I'd like to just ask you, if you look at the three relationships that we kind of focused on here today, think of, I mean, and just you can even look at just one of those three relationships. And I want you to kind of, because what I really want to always try to do on the show is really kind of give an example that shows the power of relationships. So if you think
Hmm.
of one thing that really stands out for you where you and any one of these three people were able, because of the relationship, you were able to have this huge impact in the world that hands down would have never transpired if not for your relationship with that person. And I'm just like, I see
Yeah.
you shaking your head because I can tell you're thinking of something. And
Oh
so
yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm
They're
really excited to hear what comes up for you for this, Joe.
Yeah, the Matt Wolf, I mean, when it comes to business and what I've been able to accomplish there, we co-created so much together.
Okay.
And the podcast I now do solo, Hustle and Flowchart, was him and I. We started that thing at his house without much of a direction, but we knew that, and one of the big reasons we started it is because we didn't know things. We wanted to bring experts in the room with us
Yep.
and get connected. That's one of the powers of having a podcast. It's the best networking machine. If you're into relationships and see the power, I mean, Kevin, now, you've got over 100 in the tank or so, and
Yeah.
I got 500 published, more in the tank as well, and man, I can't, like, that could not have been done without Matt initially. Now I see the frameworks and I learned so much from him. Because, like, him and I are completely different personalities, but we shared a vision enough in this thing, that this impact we wanted to do for ourselves first,
Yeah.
because I feel
Yeah.
like everything kind of starts selfishly in a way.
Totally. Totally.
Yeah. And then it extends in the podcast. The realization I had is, like, after, well, him and I starting it, him being the systems guy, me being more the connector, bring the people guy. So
Okay.
that's how that thing always worked. I realized that machine, that thing that we built, this podcast, is this ripple effect. Like, it creates change out in, I mean, all sorts of people, not only us, Matt and I at the time, but the guests that we bring on. We're sharing our values, our stories and all that. But then the listeners, of course,
Yeah.
then, and these are podcasts, you don't really hear from a lot of them because it's a silent medium, unfortunately, a lot of times, unless you engage with them somehow.
Yep.
But you're like, when you start to engage, you're like, holy crap, this thing has a ripple effect. Like,
That's
these
right.
stories we're talking about now are changing people's lives and their
Yes.
families' lives and their
Yeah.
teams' lives and their like, holy moly. So, like, I got to be selective with who I bring on this podcast.
Mhm.
And Matt had to be very attuned to the systems and actually delivering the content and
Yep.
extending it out. So yeah, I got to give him props, because it was that combo of both of our brains and abilities to make that happen.
Yeah. I remember I interviewed Mike Dillard for a
Hmm.
podcast, and Mike and I
Yeah,
go
I've
back
chatted with
a
him.
ways, and I know when he was doing the Self-Made Man podcast and
Yep.
stuff. What you said is almost identical to what Mike said. That's why he did it. Was because he just wanted to learn from all the
Mm.
people that he was interviewing and stuff. And
Yeah.
and you're right, it might, you mentioned that, it could be looked at as self-serving, but also I know too that when I take care of me first, I am in a way better spot to help a whole lot more people,
Always.
and
Yeah.
if we're not taking care of us, we kind of get cranky.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Things can
So,
spiral quick as
yes.
entrepreneurs. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah, man.
and there's a huge lesson there, because yeah, we do need to take care of us. We need to make sure we're getting fed from whatever it
Mm.
is that we do too.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
I don't ever want people feeling that I'm not enjoying what I do. I don't want them to, I want them to just know, hands down, you know what, man, there ain't no hiding the fact Kevin loves what he does, you know.
Well, Kevin, you reminded me of an aha moment that I've had just recently. I mean, I'm sure it's happened before, but everything, because as entrepreneurs, we put some pressure on ourselves that I don't think most people understand how we think and operate. And we want to fix stuff. We want to improve. We want to do better. We want to, like we have these crazy ideas and we want to have them become a creation.
Yeah.
And I realized, I'm like, but everything should be for me
Yeah.
first. It
Yes.
starts there. It needs to be selfish. And I think for a long time, I didn't see that. And I was like, oh, I'm going to do this for others. I'm going to, clients, I'm going to make their thing. But like any client I work with, I want to make sure that I'm fulfilled in the doing of that thing, because I know
Absolutely.
it's 100% going to show up better for them and their customers. And
You
the
bet.
podcast was that for me, like going solo with the show. It's been a handful of months now. It felt like pressure, like I had to do it at first. Like I gotta find the way. What's the angle? I'm doing this solo now. It's a new thing
Yeah.
because I'm so used to a partner I can kind of lean on a little.
Yep. Yep.
But I was like, no, screw that. I'm gonna make this show for me. And Matt even reminded me this the other day. He was like, when you do it for you, it comes out
Yeah.
and people connect to it more. And I'm like, you're right, man. And it takes the pressure off. Like everything should be done for us first.
That's right. That's right. Yeah, when we take care of us, and I'm with you, like as far as like clients, I mean, especially like, I've had, I mean, and I don't think I could have articulated it for a long time, but I can now, in that I don't work with people that I wouldn't invite into my home to have dinner with my family and I.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
if I wouldn't invite them into my home, the way I look at it is I got no business doing business with them,
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and it just makes it not only way easier, but just way more rewarding and fulfilling too.
Yeah.
If
100%.
yeah,
Yeah.
huge.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to have this conversation, to share, from your heart, Joe. For anybody listening to this that is just like, man, Kev, I really like Joe. I love the way Joe shows up. Is there any resources for them that you might have to offer, or anything where they can find out more about what you do with the podcast, what have you?
For sure. Yeah. Thank you, Kevin. And this has been a great platform here. And I love how you conduct it too, man. So yeah, props to what you've done here. Hustle and Flowchart, the podcast. I mean, you can find that on all the channels, all the podcast channels. Just look up Hustle and Flowchart, or you could go to the website. And at the time this is going live, it should be it's a newer website. It's fresh. So at hustleandflowchart.com. Definitely going to have some things that you can go down the rabbit hole there. And it's more on this topic that we're talking about here. It's like, how do we create an awesome life for ourselves first, but also co-create with others around us, because we're all doing that in some way in business.
Yeah.
But let's feel great by doing it and make sure that we're fulfilled. We're not burning ourselves out. Because like right now, I feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs that are seeking, oh, I got to do something a little different, because the more, the get more sales, the optimization. But it's like, how about we look at ourselves? Because that's what really permeates outward as well. So
that's right.
Yeah. Hustle and Flowchart really that's the core of everything. So you can check me out there.
Awesome. Well, Joe, any last thing you want to share before we call it a wrap?
Man, I just say keep doing this, Kevin. I love what you're doing here. Relationships if you're not seeking them out, just be open. Just be open and create some kind of system. I think the podcast is great. That's why I kept mine going. That's the networking machine, and you never know who's going to show up at your door. And just be open.
Right.
So
yeah,
thanks for doing this.
Absolutely, and thank you again, Joe. And you're right. This has been such a rewarding experience doing this and meeting a lot of people. And so I'll just kind of throw that out there. Doing a podcast could very well be and it's interesting that I have had two people on the show that as a result of doing the interview, they're like, Kevin, you inspire me. I wanted to start my own podcast, and they have. And so,
it's addicting, man. Yeah, it's work, as you know. Like you got to fulfill, and there's systems and things, but trust me, it's worth it. The consistency, it pays off.
Absolutely. Well, Joe, thanks again. Really appreciate you, man.
You got it, Kevin. Have a good one.